I started Directive because I wanted to get into consulting. I had this feeling, I guess, I didn't have any proof of it, but that I could see problems and solve them. And so I applied to some consulting firms, wasn't able to get into any of them. And so I said, well, I guess I'll have to start my own. So I never really worked anywhere. I figured I could sell like small business owners where I started with digital marketing support. So we started as a local SEO shop. I figured could I be good at that they need help with. And so people asked me to rank their websites. So I read everything that Moz had done and Distilled at the time and a lot of the search engine land and search engine journal. Went to all the conferences, tried to learn as much as I could and apply what I learned. And I was able to rank websites and grow their traffic. And from there, we kind of just grew. Yeah, I would say they're exceptionally well integrated, and we have a great culture of a growth team. So we obviously have a sales department and a marketing department, but they all live underneath our growth organization. They share KPIs. They share a total overall budget. It is a very integrated group. On the leading KPI, we look at how many proposals held did we have in a period. And then on the lagging side, we look at how many bookings that drove, how much revenue that drove. And they share both KPIs together. Yeah, I think it's usually business metrics. So we want to look at their gross margin, aka how efficiently can they deliver value with their cost of goods sold. We want to look at how long they keep a customer for in months, and then we want to understand how much on average they pay per month, whether that's for different products, services, or just blended overall. From there, we can start to build what's called a lifetime value to customer acquisition cost ratio, LTV CAC. And we can start to look at where they're spending their money, their resources, and their people to optimize it and see what can work best for their organization and their business, what has the fastest payback periods, what's most profitable, what's most efficient, and work through that. So usually I think the problem with marketers when they do forecasts and projections is they kind of isolate, they do it in isolation of the context of the business. In other words, they talk about a forecast of how many MQLs they want or how many SQLs they want, but they tend to not always want to hold themselves accountable to revenue, and they also don't want to always hold themselves accountable to the cost it took to capture or create that revenue. And so by looking at our costs and looking at our value metrics, we can be more wise with where we focus and why we're choosing to do something. Yeah, I'm not involved very often in their sales investment, just because I don't offer sales consulting services, so I try to stay within my lane to a certain extent. But if I were to zoom out and think about how I think about it for Directive, and when I coach agency owners, how I think about it for them, is in my opinion, sales is fairly poor at creating incremental bookings via incremental headcount. In other words, this concept that the way to grow revenue is to hire more salespeople, I believe is fundamentally incorrect. Instead, I see sales as a function of capturing the demand that marketing creates. So I only want salespeople for opportunities that are being given to them. Outbound is so difficult right now that SDR teams are underperforming compared to LinkedIn conversation ads and other more efficient ways of garnering attention, whether it's social media or outbound advertising. And so what I try to do is, yes, I want my sales reps to prospect, hustle, and drive incremental revenue. How effective they've been at that in my 11 years in business has been marginal at best. What I've seen them be exceptional at is capturing the demand that marketing creates. And so we scale up headcount as a reflection of our intro calls being held on a monthly basis. And we cap the amount of intro calls that HAE has every month so that they are able to properly create a consultative sales environment and add value to our prospects and do really custom pitches and great work, and also honor the fact that, over time their pipeline scales and grows. So if you give them too much work, their close rates drop and their life cycle stage efficiency declines. And so, we really treat sales as a function of capturing the demand that's created by marketing. A lot of people want super complex attribution, and I think you can get there, but I'd also argue that HubSpot's default attribution is quite strong. I think what people are usually unwilling to do is have data cleanliness and consistency. And so having strong marketing and sales ops is very important. And when I look at a business, I usually want to know less about the absolute numbers. In other words, how many proposals did you hold, which is great. That's a good, simple KPI. But a better KPI, in my opinion, is what's the percent of strat calls that you do that make it to proposal? What percent of form fills make it to an intro call held? And I like to use the held word because it accounts for the no-shows. So if you just do how many people scheduled an intro call is very different than how many people attended an intro call, how many intro calls were held. So I'm always looking at my life cycle stage performance between each part of the sales process, because sometimes volume goes up or down due to budget, but relative life cycle stage graduation might really decrease in such a way that it's inefficient. So I'm a pretty big fan of relative metrics and looking at percent changes in any given period of time to understand how efficient we are at monetizing the capital we're investing into sales and marketing. I don't know. I think that's a fluid thing. So, none of us are as powerful as we'd like, in the sense that we're at a certain size. When you're smaller, at least this was the case for me, when Directive was smaller, I felt like I could outperform the market. As Directive got larger, the market has a bigger impact on you the larger you get. In other words, I can't just make the price whatever I want. No one will pay it. I can't just choose to pay people less than the market requires. So there's a lot of creativity that's derived from these constraints that can give you an edge on the competition. But when it comes to what percent of revenue you should allocate to marketing, it depends on the macro goals of the business as well as the macroeconomics of the marketplace. And so if you start with just the business, if a business, for example, is looking to sell in the next 24 to 36 months, they're usually trying to decrease their overall OPEX investments. OPEX would count as sales, marketing, HR, IT, accounting, finance, because they're trying to have more EBITDA. So maybe historically they're growing at 50% top line revenue growth, but only at 5% EBITDA. Well, if they're going to be selling in the next 36 or 24 months, they'll traditionally maybe try to get to 20% top line revenue growth, but with 20% EBITDA, since the agencies are valued as a multiple of EBITDA. Conversely, Directive for the first 10 years wanted to have as little as EBITDA as possible once we had 3 months of cash runway in the bank, so that we could decrease our tax bill and increase our investments into R&D, innovation, and market share with sales and marketing. So it really depends on the stage. And then when it comes to the macroeconomics, right now is a really tough time depending on which sector you serve. Right? So some sectors, given the positioning of your agency and what you specialize in, whether it's service or vertical, are slow right now. For example, we serve only software. When Silicon Valley Bank collapsed in March of 2023, we saw a lot of the market erode. When interest rates rose near the end of 2022, and then have continued until now, where they haven't really decreased back to where they were when there was explosive growth in the space, the goals of these software companies went from growth at all costs to efficient growth with shorter payback periods on the capital deployed. So macroeconomics plays a big part in how much revenue you invest into sales and marketing, and so also does the kind of time and place of the business and what its long-term goals are. When things are difficult, and market conditions deteriorate and demand for your services slow down, you could theoretically cut sales and marketing. And within wisdom, you should decrease some expenditure if you're not monetizing it. I'd argue, though, that it's a beautiful time for innovation around price. So when Directive was facing cost pressures from its clients because software businesses were drastically cutting their marketing budgets, I didn't intrinsically say I'm going to spend less on my sales and marketing. I said I need to innovate an offering that would add value to my audience given the fact that they have less budget. And so we actually went down market for the first time in the history of Directive. We now have a startup package that we sell for $57.50 a month. It's month-to-month pricing, no percent of spend. It gives you a ton of different services across multiple departments, and it's been a massive success. Our clients are giving us really strong customer satisfaction scores. We have exceptional retention despite no long-term contracts, and the volume of revenue it's added to Directive has been substantial. So one of the fastest growing, and is the fastest growing business unit we have. So it's not so much that when market conditions deteriorate, you should cut spend in a reactive and fearful way, but you should instead, I believe, understand which segments of your audience you're advertising to and what products and price you're positioning in front of them is valuable, and make sure that you have resonance given what's going on around you, and that you are dynamic in how you create value and stay relevant in your pricing and in your value proposition in tough times. I'd say Directive disrupted the industry because it's had a deep sense of purpose with what it offers. So the way Directive works is Directive and its agency financial model actually reflects that of a software business. We operate on recurring revenue. We track the same KPIs a software business tracks, and we share the same problems a software business has, right? We want the right person at the right account, not any person at any account. We have renewals that we have to do well with. We have customer success that we have to listen and support, and we have outcomes that we need to achieve. The key for Directive and its innovation is that we spend a lot of our own capital, our own finances on marketing R&D. In other words, getting new campaigns, concepts, tactics, or channels to drive growth for us. And when we do, we then productize that, create very strong onboarding, we create departments, we create visibility systems, we create feedback systems with our clientele and our strategists, and we essentially offer services that have worked for Directive internally. And by having that intimate, soulful connection to the services we sell, we see exceptional customer satisfaction from our clients, as well as very high goal attainment with our customers. And so with every new client that we get at Directive, we set what we call a North Star metric. A North Star metric for us is almost always a KPI the business has never attained before and the last agency failed at accomplishing. Currently, for example, in our paid media department, we're accomplishing that North Star metric 79% of the time. That's something I'm deeply proud of, and I think our innovation just comes from our commitment and our soul in how we purposely and competitively pursue the goals of our customers. I'm really looking forward to the video offering that Directive's launched. We've had video for over 3 years now. I think it's been 3 years. And we also have programmatic for multiple years now. I think the biggest innovation that Directive's focused on is how it creates demand and differentiates its customers. The software business operates on innovation. So if you're a B2B software company or just a software company in general, you intrinsically have this supply and demand problem because people don't search for products that are truly innovative because they don't know they exist. And so brands can come to Directive, software businesses, and say, we really want to grow. And the traditional playbook of Google search and SEO and a little bit of paid social doesn't really work, because you have to charge a lot of money to offer those services. There's not always enough people looking for the product that the company that hired you is selling, that you can't intrinsically grow the business by capturing existing demand. And so what I think Directive's done exceptionally well and is the market leader at is LinkedIn advertising and paid social advertising for B2B and for software companies, and is now going beyond that into CTV and taking traditionally consumer channels for direct-to-consumer businesses and e-commerce business and packaged good companies and just traditional consumer brands, and taking that concept of differentiation, compelling creative, and a strong value prop and offer, and bringing that creative into more awareness and demand creation type advertising, so that these software businesses can actually grow their total addressable market and accelerate their ability to take market share from competitors and incumbents. And I think that that's what I'm most looking forward to finish out the year, is just a really, really improved and even stronger offering from Directive with creating demand for its software clients. Yeah, if you're a software company and whether you're spending a lot of money on your marketing or just a little, we have an offering that's relevant to your stage of growth, and we take results exceptionally seriously. So even on our startup package, the talent is phenomenal. The customer satisfaction scores are very high. We're averaging 4.2 to 4.3 out of 5 across 30 accounts, and we have an exceptionally dedicated team. So whether you're a brand like Gong, who just renewed with us and has grown with us exceptionally well, or whether you're a startup that maybe no one's ever heard of, we have a service for you that drives incremental bookings and helps you take market share, and are deeply passionate about not only results but also your experience.